Okay, 10 lessons of part 1. We're not going to start that right yet, though. We're going to do an overview, an introduction.
Good idea.
To the bass, as it were.
Great.
What do I need to follow this course?
You need a bass.
Show me what a bass looks like.
You've got one right there.
Okay.
And I've got one right here.
Pick that one up.
Good idea.
All right, so what do we...
There's my bass.
What is a bass guitar?
This is a bass guitar. It's got 4 strings. It's got various bits of technology all over it.
Mm-hmm.
We should describe all that stuff.
Yeah, can I just say something?
You can.
You're holding that the wrong way around. From what little I know of guitar
You think
playing.
it should be like that.
Am I wrong or am I wrong?
No, you're kind of right and wrong. But that's the way it should be held. But when I left school and got a bass, at that time you couldn't get left-handed basses. So I just got a bass from somebody, borrowed a bass from somebody and practiced it, and that was it, joined the band.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very left-handed, so I just played it all very left-handed. These days, of course, you can get left-handed basses, so you don't have to worry about banging your arm on the controls or the lead or anything. It's all very well balanced.
Okay.
At the moment, I'm just sitting down, but if I'd strapped it on and all that stuff, you know, it would all be... So I'm kind of playing upside down and back to front and everything.
Okay.
So...
All right, so what makes it a bass guitar as opposed to an electric normal guitar?
Yeah, good question. Electric guitar's got 6 strings and this has got only 4. I guess the main difference is that electric guitar, they'd be playing chords and melodies and solos and improvising. Not that the bass doesn't do that, but at this kind of foundation level, grade 1, you're more involved in sorting out the rhythm, you know, in the rhythm section with the drums, making sure that the music's grooving or rocking or whatever it's supposed to be doing. So the bass provides much more of a foundation, it's more rhythmic. You often play one note at a time, that kind of stuff. What's
the difference in sound, sort of pitch variation?
Yeah, good question. The bass is written, the music for bass is written in bass clef, obviously, and it's a kind of a low sound. Let me demonstrate. Quite low, that's the low E string, the thickest string on the bass. And if I play that E a bit higher on the bass, so the range of the bass is much lower than the guitar. The guitar's usually, the music's written in treble clef, and obviously for melodies they're played much higher so they sound clearer for people. This is normally down the bottom end of the band with the drums in the engine room. Yeah. In fact, we've got a picture of a bass, if I may, on
sure.
On the Gigajam material.
So these are the course notes that we can get with it?
Yep. They're in lesson 3, those course notes, and as you can see, it's a very detailed diagram of this very bass, and it's got an explanation which we can kind of run through of all the hardware on the bass.
All right, where do we begin?
Well, essentially, I'd like to start with the fact that it's made of wood, which everyone's probably figured out, and they're usually made of 2 pieces. This piece is the neck, and this piece is the body. And then they're usually joined by being glued and then bolted, so it's a nice secure fitting.
Turn me over, turn the guitar over, let's have a look at the back of that.
There you go.
Alright, so that's just joined on there. Any problem with that falling off or anything like that?
Shouldn't do, I've never had any problem with that. I mean, they're usually well made, you pay good money, and they usually take care of that stuff for you.
Okay, it looks slightly longer than
an electric guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a bit longer, the scale. Not quite as long as a double bass or something, which would be even longer like an orchestral acoustic bass, but it's definitely longer than an electric guitar. And the strings are, well, obviously secured at this end and at this end.
Okay, how are they? Talk me through how they are secured then. Let's start.
Well, this is the bridge, so the strings are secured through that and they ride over the saddles, over the pickups, all the way down the neck. To this end of the bass. So we've got body, strings running down the neck, to what they call the headstock here.
And how are they secured at the headstock?
Yeah, they're pushed into the tuning pegs and then spun around, and then they're tightened up using these, we call them machine heads, some people call them tuning pegs, which have got a kind of gear system so that when you need to tune up the bass, tune the strings, you can turn these, twist these, to make sure you get the notes of the bass in tune, the open strings in tune.
Okay, so that's how you tune the bass up.
Yeah.
And we'll be going into a little bit of detail about that in a moment.
Okay.
Let's move down. Following the strings down, this is the neck.
Yeah.
Little lines separating the neck.
Yeah, they're frets. They're made of wire, fret wire. They're metal, and they're just to divide the neck up so that when you put your finger there, you get the right note that you were hoping for.
And how many does the amount of frets change sort of between each bass, or do you get more or less on a certain model?
No, pretty standard. If you have a a specially made bass, or you buy a very exotic bass, you might get a few more up here, up what we call the dusty end, where you don't do much playing really in the beginning. Most of it's down here, so you can hook up with the drums. The good thing about the bass, and especially the bass neck, is that it's symmetrical. So as we get into the lessons and learn stuff, when we learn thing in one place, we call it a position on the bass, then we can transfer that information to a different place and copy it all across to a new note. So the bass neck
handy
is,
little hints.
Yeah, symmetrical. It's good
all right,
stuff.
Moving down, we've obviously got the strings carry on onto the body.
Yeah, this is a kind of important part of the technology, in the sense that if you play the bass, if you're sat alone in your bedroom, you're going to hear that. But if you're trying to play with a band, nobody's going to hear you. So you'll need to make more noise, more volume, which means amplifying the sound. So,
do they have a built-in amplifier? I mean,
they have these things which are called pickups, which effectively do the same thing. They pick up the sound. So when you play, for example, that E string vibrates, and these two pickups on this bass, there are two pickups, pick up that sound and then transmit that through the electronics on here and down this lead or cable and into that fantastic amplifier and speaker cabinet behind you there.
Okay, so when you have a bass guitar, you need to have one of these as well?
If you're going to be playing in a band, or you want to jam with guys, or you want to annoy the neighbours and make a racket, then you need to get one of those. But if you can't afford one, it doesn't stop you getting started, you just play a little more quietly. But as I say, you can do that in the safety of your own bedroom, and you can hear what you're doing,
All right, okay. Well, you've mentioned the E string. That's the bottom one, or the top one, if we were playing it the other way around.
Absolutely, well said.
That's the thickest one.
Yes.
So E is the thickest one. Talk me through the names of the other ones.
The next one is A. So that's E, is the thickest one. A is the next one. Want to have a guess?
E, A. No.
D. And the thinnest one, which is for me at the top, is the G string. It made sense to me because this E string is the thickest one, and it's the lowest or deepest sound, the bassiest sound. So to me, it made sense that it was at the bottom, and when I played up, I came up through the sound spectrum, as it were, higher noises. But of course, I'm doing everything wrong, as we discussed just now, and it should be like that way around.
Okay. You were twiddling those little silver dials up there.
Yeah.
What do they do?
They make it sound louder.
I like that.
So each of these, on this particular bass, each of these knobs, these volume knobs or volume controls, do exactly that, control the volume. So if I play with none of them on, you get no sound. If I turn one on, you get a bit of sound. If I turn that off, you get no sound. If I turn the back one on, back pickup. So these pickups have separate volume controls. Different basses have slightly different configurations. The one that we've got on the Gigajam example has a separate volume controls as well. So usually the best thing to do is turn it full up and play.
And the third one is that?
And the back one is a kind of a tone control. So it's like the sort of thing you have on your stereo or your hi-fi at home or in the car. Or it just makes it sound more bassy or a bit trebly, quite difficult to hear in the studio here, the way it's set up. This bizarre thing you probably won't see on most basses. If you look at your bass, it doesn't have one of those on. This is an interface, a piece of technology to allow this bass to speak to computers and access the Gigajam information for the lessons later on. So that's kind of an unusual, and this extra pickup on here is simply to power that.
Ah, so that's what we'll be talking about in part 2. How do I tune my guitar? You said that's an E string, and obviously when it's in its open position, that's the note it should play. What if it doesn't play the E?
Oh, that means you're out of tune. So we need to tune up the bass.
How does one tune up the bass?
Best way is to use a tuner. So
Like a fish?
not that, it's spelled slightly differently, I believe. And this is the tuner we're using today. This equipment does a lot of stuff, but we're just going to use the tuner function. So I'll push tuner function, switch the bass on, and play my E string. Usually start with the E string. You can buy a tuner for about £20 or something.
All right, that's quite good.
Yeah, maybe a bit more than that. And often if you buy a starter pack, I'm just tuning here as we do it, if you buy a starter pack, they'll give you a bass and lead, cable, strings, tuner, maybe put it all in a case. So there we go, there's the E.
Okay, so does it matter if you tune up or tune down?
You see where it is first, so happily here it's on E, so I haven't got any problem, but let's just knock it out of tune by lowering, flattening, slackening off the string. So now it says D, which is obviously wrong, because that open should be an E. So we'll tune it up by tightening the string, and it should come up to E anytime soon. I'm trying to lose the red lights and get me a nice green light, and then I'm in business. If I over-tune it, I'll go past, get an F.
That's slightly sharp, yeah.
You following me? Yeah, slightly sharp, good, and then go back, and finally get the E. I'll settle for that, I think, and then I would repeat that process for all the other strings, the A string, the D string, and the G string, get them all in tune, and then switch the tuner function off, and then I'm ready to rock and roll.